Search YouTube now for full reviews of the new SimToo Moment drone and you won't find one besides ours. We are once again the very first to review a brand new drone. Hit that subscribe button now to be our very first viewer in future and comment with your location to let us know who's watching and from where. Enjoy the review. Hi, I'm Ash from DroningON and this is yet another exclusive first review. Drone consumers are starting to consider safety as a key USP when looking to buy new products, and the first drone to have emerged with fully enclosed props was the hover camera. It was so popular in fact that Apple now actually stock it in their stores and website, but in all honesty the reviews don't look that good and the video quality is questionable. Next was Snap Drone from Vantage Robotics, a pre-order campaign which has struggled through to production, but despite looking very impressive, it is unfortunately a year late and there are still many questions around why it's not yet arrived with the majority of customers. But now, SimToo have introduced a new drone at half the price of hover camera and a third the price of Snap. It is still in development, the app and firmware are being updated regularly to introduce new features. This is part one where we'll unbox, set up, install the app and even test fly Moment drone indoors. In part two, we'll be taking the drone out for a full flight test. So comment below with your thoughts, we need your interaction, give the video a thumbs up and once again hit that subscribe button if you want to be the very first to see reviews of brand new drones. So sent to us from Hobby Wow, this is I believe a pre-release version of the SimToo Moment drone. Therefore the app may still be yet to be finalised from what I read, but let's have a look at this interesting new drone. So it's packaged really nicely, this box is very good quality and just looking around it doesn't really tell us a whole lot actually, so they're leaving everything for you as you open the box. So let's have a look inside. First thing we've got is a carry case. It's about time drones came with a carry case actually. It's a minimal cost to the manufacturer, but it just means for the money you're spending, you're getting a much more rounded package. So that's nice. We'll have a look at the drone in a minute. An instruction manual, a USB charging cable, and that is a USB-C charging cable there. There's the actual charger itself, and you can see we've got the American plug on the end. That's what the adapter's for. And then a battery. Now, the colour of this battery may be a clue as to the colour of the drone that we've got. The SimToo Moment is available in three different colours: rose gold, champagne gold and black. I have a bad feeling we've got the rose coloured one, which will be quite entertaining. Looking at the specification of the drone as well, I believe that this is actually a lithium-ion battery, which seems to be a new trend now that lithium ions are becoming better at coping with load. And of course it means also that the flying conditions in which you can use a lithium-ion battery with a drone are much more flexible, so you can use these to a much lower temperature. It's a 2900 milliamp 2-cell battery, 7.6 volt, so it's a high capacity battery there as well. And on the top there's a little light here, and if we press it actually, it's a button. So that may be giving us an indication of the charge, but we'll have to read about that later. But enough of the accessories, on to the exciting bit, which is the drone. So let's unzip this case that you get free with it. And there it is, and yes, it is pink. Okay, no sexist comments in the video comments, please. Pink is for boys as well. So there it is, it's very lightweight actually. It's bigger than I thought actually. If you look at the pictures online, it looks quite small, but this is quite chunky. It is nice and portable. This is its fully folded state, and I would say that that would easily slip into a bag or a rucksack. And also by doing so, it doesn't feel so fragile. So I don't think you're gonna incur any damage by squeezing it in with other things in your bag. The main construction material of this drone is plastic. So all of these parts here are plastic. The spars around the motors, the cages here, are actually a very flexible plastic. So you can literally squeeze the spars together there, which is fairly good actually, because if you do impact something, they're going to flex instead of just cracking. And of course, being circular, this structure is very strong. So if you hit something from the side or from the front, that should be nice and rigid. So the battery on this drone is on the top, which most batteries on drones I would say are probably underneath or inside the center of them actually. Being on top means that the center of gravity is quite high on this drone. Attaching the battery is very easy. Just slide it in place and click down. The button on top, the light here, becomes the power button. Press it once and it flashes. I don't know if that's given us a level of the battery itself, but if you press and hold it, it turns the drone on. The only design fault I see right now is removal of that battery, which is quite tricky. There are two small parts down on either side. You can just see them here. You have to press those in and pull the battery up. But because the prop cages are kind of in the way, it's not so easy to do. So you end up flexing the battery quite a lot. You get there in the end, but it's just not that well designed. Also within the battery bay is the SD card slot. Now here I have a bit of a problem, and it reminds me of a Naga fly, I'm ashamed to say. The actual SD card element on the PCB within this slot is not perfectly aligned. And so when you put the SD card in, you've kind of got to tilt it down a little bit and then click it in with your fingernail. The card actually then disappears. So it's not so easy to get it back out unless you've got long fingernails. But when you eventually do get it out, there is also a risk that it may drop inside here. So not a very good design feature, but remember, this is a pre-release version and hopefully they'll fix that on the final build. I also notice inside the battery bay, there is an indication here that it is V1. So if you've ordered the Moment drone and it arrives, check what version you have down here to make sure you have a final version, not a pre-release one. One other maintenance element to consider is the props. Now, you're very unlikely to break a prop here unless you hit something really hard because they are shrouded within these prop guards. However, the package doesn't come with any spare props. Hopefully these are available as spares just in case. And it looks like to replace a prop, all you need to do is remove the two very small Allen bolts here, lift out a section of the cage, and then you undo these tiny little screws on the actual props themselves. So the folding designer drones has now become very popular, and obviously you've got the Snap from Vantage Robotics that many of you are still eagerly awaiting delivery of. The props are fully enclosed, so you literally cannot touch the prop unless you have tiny fingers and can squeeze them through these prop cages. They're brushless motors inside and they're spinning 4-inch 3-blade props. Now these are really chunky looking props actually, with a lot of pitch on those blades. The motors themselves are very small, but I believe that this thing will fly at a maximum speed of 4 meters a second, which is fairly quick actually, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this flies in the flight test. Looking at the front, one of the most important elements is of course the camera. Now, interestingly, we actually have a tiltable gimbal here. You can hear the motor on there, and not only is that tiltable for capturing shots, but it's also serving as a one-axis gimbal, very similar to the Extreme Flyers micro drone gimbal. So you've got one-axis stabilization on the vertical plane. It's also got electronic image stabilization for the other two axes. So the camera's rated at 12 megapixels. That means it's capable of 4K video and it's quoted at 25 frames a second. It's also capable of 1080p at 60 frames per second, which is really good. Obviously being 12 megapixel, you're also going to get really nice high quality photos out of this drone. Also on the bottom here, we've got an optical flow sensor. That's a downward facing camera, which means that when you're flying indoors without a GPS lock, it's able to see what's below it and maintain its hover on the spot. As usual, there's also an ultrasonic sensor on the back. That's for helping the drone to detect when it's close to the ground, and it also serves as a form of downward obstacle avoidance. Hidden within these two turrets here, we've also got GPS built in, and it also supports GLONASS, so it's using the Russian network as well, the combination of which means you're going to get a really good GPS lock. Now, interestingly, this drone is the first budget drone that I've seen to support a new technology called SLAM, which stands for Simultaneous Localization and Mapping. Now, the only other drones I've seen that featured on are the Mavics and the Phantoms, and ultimately what that means is that the drone, as you're flying it around, is mapping out its terrain. So as you're flying it, and hopefully not crashing it, it knows that it can fly into that location and there are no obstacles there, and in its internal processing, it maps that that location is safe. So essentially the drone becomes self-aware of where you're flying it, which is great for indoor flights, of course, because it means that it's going to be safer. How that works in the real world is yet to be seen. I'll try and find a way to demonstrate that during the flight test. So as a size comparison, if I just fold this drone up, which is very easy to do, and place it there. I'm now going to place the Wingsland S6 next to it to show you just how big this is, and also the Dobby. So you can see that they decrease in size here, the Dobby being the smallest and the Moment drone being the biggest. But ultimately, this is a different kind of drone. This is designed primarily for safety, and as soon as you introduce prop guards, you're going to end up with a much bigger drone. Now let's take a quick look at the weight. So without the battery, this drone weighs in at 295. It's just over 400 grams with the battery attached. So 295 without the battery. The Wingsland S6 weighs in at 187 without the battery, and the Dobby weighs in at 144. So again, the smaller the drone, the lighter the drone. So in terms of charging the Moment drone, there are a few different options. It does come with a transformer. It also comes with a dock for the battery. In the back of the dock, there is a port into which you can plug that charger so that you can charge the battery via a mains connection. However, there is also a USB-C connection on the back of this dock so that you can plug this straight into a USB power source, such as this one here. You can then plug that into the back of the charger, and then of course dock your battery so that it can charge via portable power sources. Now that's really handy if you're out in the field. You can even plug this into your car to charge the battery. So the blue light on the top is flashing now. I'm going to leave that to finish charging, and we'll come back to it shortly. It's also worth mentioning that this is specified at about a 15-minute flight time. So we'll check that during the flight test to see if that holds true. Now the exciting bit. So powering on the AirSelfie Moment drone from SimToo is very easy. Press and hold the button on the battery, and after a few seconds, you get the usual speed controller startup sound, which actually sounds very standard. So I don't think they've used proprietary speed controllers there. And the blue light starts flashing, as does the light on the front. The gimbal camera as well is quite static at the moment. It's not doing any kind of stabilization, but I can feel that that has now become rigid, so the motor there is active. Now I can hear the ultrasonic sensor. I'm just going to put it close to the microphone. I don't know if you can hear that, but the ultrasonic downward facing sensor on this drone must be one of the most powerful I've ever heard on a drone. Literally, as I rotate this drone around, the ultrasonic is bouncing off the walls and the ceiling of this room. It's also probably one of the biggest ultrasonic sensors that I've seen. So I think this thing's gonna certainly have a good awareness of the ground. I've never heard ultrasonics as loud as this before. But the drone itself is silent. There's no fan that I can hear at all, so there's no cooling inside. Now this is a Wi-Fi controlled drone. There is no transmitter with this, and so hidden within these turrets here is some Wi-Fi technology. Now this doesn't use 5 gigahertz, it only emits a 2.4 gigahertz, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because we're not that bothered about latency of video because this is not a racing drone, and 2.4 gigahertz gives us better range, so that's not necessarily a negative. So by now, the AirSelfie Moment drone should have started emitting Wi-Fi. Let's take a look at the app. So I'm using an Android platform here, and so I'm going to fire up the Google Play Store and search for the app, which, if you just search for Moment drone, that's the easiest way to find it. And there it is, AirSelfie drone, and you can see there the name SimToo is finally mentioned. So they are associating themselves with this new product. The drone has a score at the moment of 1, people moaning that it's crashing, and the other one saying do the best. Not quite sure what they mean by that. But this is a brand new drone, it's a brand new app, so I would ignore those reviews. Hit install, and it's downloading 50 megabytes, which is a big old app. If we just have a look at what's new, this is currently version 1.2.9, and it was last updated on the 12th of August, so not too long ago. We're just going to wait for that to finish installing, and in the meantime, whilst we wait for that to install, we're going to look at Wi-Fi networks. So drop down your Wi-Fi networks and have a look at which ones are available. Now you're not going to see Moment drone listed there, which you might expect. Instead, this drone is called the XT200 and then some random characters. So click that and then type in the password, which is not the normal 1 to 8. It's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 0. Click connect, and that should connect us to the drone. Now we're going to switch back to the Play Store and click open to open the AirSelfie app. So we've got an intro screen, we've got some warnings from the Civil Aviation Administration of China, but let's face it, lots of these warnings are self-explanatory and logical common sense. So fly your drone safely, and it means we can all keep flying. I'm going to skip this by sliding to the right and the left. It's warning us there as well about compass and accelerometer calibration. That's really good that it's warning us that that is necessary. We will do that as one of our steps. Keep going, blah, blah, blah. It's given us a guide to all the controls here. I probably should be reading this actually, but we're going to look for ourselves. So we are finally into the app. I'm going to click connect at this point. So we're now in the app, and I'm going to give a very quick tour because this is a pre-release app, and so it's subject to probably lots of updates. I don't want to spend too long on it. So looking at the top, we've got on the left-hand side, there's a button to toggle the rapid fire photo. So basically that takes 3 photos or 1. Below that, you've got timer shot, which you can obviously use if you're using this as a selfie cam. You've then got a button which basically turns on a kind of flyaway mode where it records video for 10 seconds, but I'm not sure if there's any automatic flying with that. We'll see in the flight test. Below that is the ability to toggle between your normal controls where you've got your on-screen left, right, up, down, altitude, etc. Or you can use point mode. Now this is quite interesting. Point mode basically works by touching the screen. So as you can see, if I lift the drone up now, I can press down on the screen on a certain object and the drone basically focuses on that object. So I've also noticed when I just did a very early flight test that if you also press on the left or right of the screen, it rotates the drone around. So this is a little bit like tap to fly on the DJI drones, but perhaps not quite as advanced. Then we've got auto takeoff, which is basically quite self-explanatory. When you hit that, the drone is obviously going to take off. It will automatically then ascend to around 1.5 meters. Now, I've actually just put the drone on the windowsill to see if I can get some satellites acquired for this app tour. So keep an eye on the figure at the top up here, and you'll see hopefully that figure go up slightly. Next along is the shutter button. Obviously pressing that once takes photos, and you press it again to take another photo. Next to that, on the right-hand side, we've got return to home. Now, pressing that means that it will fly back to the last location that it detected you were stood at. Now, when you take off, the takeoff button here actually changes to a land button. So once you're in the air, you've got 2 options for landing. You can either use the land wherever it is, or the return to home option, which obviously will actually fly it back to you. Top right, we've got a settings button, but below that, we've got the gimbal tilt control. Now, this is quite cool. Whilst it's in flight, you can actually tilt the camera up and down, and I really like that capability. If only Dobby had that, it would be the ultimate drone. And you can tilt it down a full 90 degrees as well, which is nice and flexible. The only thing I would say, however, regarding that gimbal tilt is be very careful, because when you've got the gimbal tilting fully downwards, if you then come into land on concrete, the camera will be the first thing that hits the ground. So you might want to add some little feet to the underside of this drone, just in case you forget to tilt the gimbal back up. You'll notice as well that we've actually now acquired 5 satellites so far. That will no doubt keep going up. So below the gimbal tilt button is the button to toggle between photo and video mode. I don't know why they've placed that button there instead of down here next to the shutter. It would be much more logical down here. But pressing that starts video recording. I'll leave that just for a couple of seconds, and then it stops video recording when you press it again. Finally, obviously, we've got the library. So to look at the gallery of photos and videos that we've already captured, there are a number of different options there. You can delete, or you can obviously download it properly to your device. And then finally, at the very, very bottom here, we've got the follow me option. So this kind of works like active track from what I've seen so far. Once you press that button, it basically says it will detect the target to follow and you can follow the white box. Not quite sure what it means, but we'll look at that in the flight test. We've got settings up here. We've got rocker settings. So this lets you toggle between the mode 1 and mode 2, basically throttle on the left or throttle on the right. Then we've got sensitivity, so primary, I guess they mean beginner by primary, but this basically is how fast the drone is going to move when you give it inputs. So we'll probably leave that on intermediate for now, actually. And then we've got disc calibration. I don't know why they call it disc calibration. In here, we can calibrate the compass via the usual means of rotating the drone around, and also calibrate the accelerometer by keeping it on a flat surface. Not seen that on a drone before, actually, an accelerometer calibration, only on the racing drone type flight controllers. So interesting to see that here. Finally, we've got camera settings. So we've got video and photo settings. For photos, we've got single shot, continuous shooting or timer shot. Photo resolution, which goes up to 16 megapixels. That's really good. And white balance on auto, obviously. Distortion correction, not quite sure what that is, but we'll have a look. For the video settings, we've got the video size at 1080p 50 frames a second at the moment, but that goes all the way up to our 4K setting here at 25 frames per second, so we'll set it to that. We've also got a white balance control for video as well. So the battery takes about an hour to charge. I haven't left it charging, so you can see we're now only on 1%. But as soon as that battery's charged and the weather gets a little bit better outside, I'll be taking this out for a flight test. In the meantime, I gave this a very quick flight test indoors and it's incredibly stable. I'm very impressed with the indoor hover. The optical float sensing downwards is very, very good, and it did not budge from its hover location in the lounge. So very impressed. I actually then took it for a little bit of a further flight into the house, through into the kitchen, as you can see. Here's some onboard video from that flight as well, and I'll leave you with that. So subscribe now to see part 2, which will be the outdoor flight test. Click that thumbs up button, and of course, please comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching.